grading is completely different, and it seems like a technical thing, but it's actually really important, because in the States you're used to, okay, you know, I need to get a 90 or above, I need to get an 80 or above, I need to get a 70 or above just to pass. But when you're there, 0 to 49 is failing, 50 to 74 is passing, and then 75 and above is called a distinction. So distinctions are great and everyone loves them, but realistically, you know, my entire time there, I think I put out good work. I'm a graduate student right now, but I never got above like an 85. And sometimes I put my heart and soul into these papers, so it's kind of humbles you, but I think knowing that before I went there would have been helpful. It has its benefits and its drawbacks, because at least the way credit transfers over here, like a distinction was an A. So you can imagine, you know, getting a 75, 76 back on a paper, and in your head you're saying, wow, that is a low grade, but then you think about the transfer credit, and that's an A. So it has its benefits. It definitely teaches you to begrudgingly accept a 50 or 60 on some days. That was by far the people. They are, I mean, I study anthropology, so I like talking with and working with people, but they're just really friendly, and I find, especially at Case, like everyone's busy all the time, so you don't really have a lot of days when you can just sit down where it's warm outside and not snowing and just have a, you know, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour conversation with someone. Don't get me wrong, UCT is a hard school, bad, but when I was researching it, they said it was the best institution in Africa, and when I went there, it was challenging. But I can't tell you how many days I spent, you know, on Jammy Steps, which is in Upper Campus. It's these beautiful, really large, you know, cookie cutter steps that people can sit on. Campus is on a mountain, so you just see everything. But I can't tell you how many times I just sat on those steps talking to some new stranger about, hey, I'm American, where are you from? And that's usually a conversation starter. That was one of the more interesting times. So, like, my name is Carlos, middle name's Antonio, mom's from Panama, dad is from Cleveland, actually. Most people assume I'm black, which isn't a bad thing. It's like, yeah, you see my skin color, that makes sense. When you go there, they have black people, white people, Indian people, and colored people. So it kind of works with your accent and your skin tone. So there, people perceive me as colored. And you know, you hear that when you go through orientation and people say, please don't take offense, they're well-meaning about it. But actually having a conversation with someone about that is not bad, just jarring. I was speaking with a female student on campus, and she jokingly said, you know, you're not black, you're American. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, do I agree, do I disagree, how do I handle this situation? So that was something that I was able to do multiple times with multiple different people, and really try and deconstruct, okay, blackness here is very different than blackness there, and that's not a bad thing, it's just a different thing. And like being able to talk about those differences and think about them is, in my opinion, worthwhile. I'm pretty cynical by nature, so before I considered studying abroad, I was saying to myself, okay, you know, you go to this other place, you talk with different people, great, and then you come back and keep living your own life. So I thought that it just changes you, or you go to a different place, and that new experience is somehow worthwhile. But when I actually went there, there's a bit of a nuance to it, because I realized, you know, there's differences everywhere. You talk with different people, you go to different places, but usually you are used to those small differences, so you don't notice them, you don't think critically about them, you don't let them kind of influence your next decision. They just roll by, and it either shocks you and you don't like it, or you just play it down and it's not there. But studying abroad is unique because the differences are kind of prolonged and intensified, not in a bad way, just in a very noticeable way. So you can't not notice it. And at least the classes I was taking made me think critically about it. So in that way, you get more attuned to noticing differences, not in a nitpicky, I don't like that kind of way, but in a this is a different person and I should consider that and give them the space that they deserve instead of just downplaying differences. So I recently got accepted into the Peace Corps. That was an interesting time in a really good way, but the path that I'm trying to take is ultimately to get into the Foreign Service of the U.S. State Department. So being a diplomat or a foreign service officer is the dream at this point. Like, that would be, I just really want to live that lifestyle and build the relationships that they build. But as I talked to more foreign service officers and reached out to them and said, hey, could I do an informational interview with you just to get your thoughts on how you got here today, one of the questions I asked them was, how did you prepare yourself to be doing what you're doing right now? And if you could go back in time, how would you better prepare yourself? And people keep saying, oh, I just do the Peace Corps again. At that point, I didn't know what the Peace Corps was. So I looked into it and I'm like, okay, this is a 2-year commitment. That's a little long. You get to pick the place, which is okay, but they can reassign you. So that's also interesting. But the more serious I got about doing the Foreign Service, the more serious I got about doing the Peace Corps. I applied to it. They accepted me. Interestingly enough, they assigned me to Lesotho, which is the country inside of South Africa. It's kind of coming full circle. But studying abroad fits in because, I'm anxious about going already, but I think I'd be more anxious had I not studied abroad and kind of been in South Africa for 6 months, because you get used to the differences and you get used to the people, and sure, you'll be meeting different people and be going to different places, but at the very least you have that experience. So I feel like studying abroad kind of prepped me for the Peace Corps, and then time will tell, Peace Corps preps me for the Foreign Service.